Now, as we all know, mediation, some of us, we can define mediation. Some of us, we are not sure as to the definition of, to the exact definition of what mediation is about. But briefly, I will just give you a definition of what mediation is. Mediation is a third-party assisted negotiation process. Now, if you see my screen, you will see that there's no explicit definition of mediation in the context of social movement. I'll try before the end of the webinar to give you my own definition as we progress. But even though there's no explicit definition of mediation in the context of social movement, we can see from the framework of mediation being a tool of alternative dispute resolution mechanism, to be able to use it to understand what the process entails and to be able to apply mediation in addressing or resolving disputes within the context of social movement. Majority of us, we are familiar with family mediation, communal mediation, and other mechanisms, other aspects in which mediation can be used in resolving dispute. But today we are talking of social movements, and with particular reference to protests, particularly the recent protests we have in Nigeria. Now, looking at my screen, you can also see a very shining, beautiful pressure cooker. What that tells you is, in mediation, parties are allowed to vent. Parties are allowed to blow off steam. That steam in the sense of expressing themselves, telling you their feelings, what they perceive to be their positions in the conflict, what exactly they think or they believe is the reason or the result of the dispute, which we can all see as conflict. Now, because a whole lot of emotions, feelings have been bottled up inside our pressure cooker, which we're using as an example, you can see the steam coming out. Both parties are fuming. In this case, we're talking about the disputing parties. Particular reference to groups. So let's not take it out of context. Remember, we're talking of social movements. When we define mediation and give types or examples of disputes, we say intra or intergroup conflicts. Social movement is an example of intergroup conflicts where you have different groups, protestants, governments, or stakeholders, as the case may be, conflicting over varying issues within that movement. Now, while parties are expressing themselves and stating what their grievances are, you can see our shiny green radars and pointers. What that tells you is, in the process of discussing and venting and blowing out these things, parties will often mention those things that are of particular interest to them, which needs to be addressed. So as a mediator, you need to pay attention to those pointers, to those issues which they have raised. Parties will tell you a whole lot of stories. And using the context of social movement, you will hear hunger in the land, there's no food, this is not giving us light. In the midst of all that that's being said, there are pointers to what protesters, as the case may be, are trying to tell you. Mediation, the essence of using mediation in social movement is it addresses grievances, be it community members, be it the government, be it the interest groups. They would always be able to open up to you as a mediator. Of course, if you provide them, if you build trust and you get them to open up to you, they will always tell you what it is that is paining them. Our ordinary Ahmed president will tell you is that thing that chokes you in your kumeme. So that thing really that is actually hurting the parties. I see Joshua smiling. That thing that is really hurting the parties is what mediation allows them to express, to address. Of course, mediation facilitates dialogue. Is another reason, another importance, another essence why we use mediation in addressing grievances in social movements. It facilitates dialogue because conflict provides a situation where parties in that conflict do not want to see eye to eye or do not want to talk to themselves. Providing a safe space, a safe environment where they can open up to you and discuss will facilitate a movement from I don't want to talk, or I'm not seeing you, or I can't stay in the same environment with you, to I am not happy for you doing X, Y, Z to me. Now, of course, when we talk about conflict resolution or we talk about stages of conflict, we say there are 5 stages. In this particular context of social movement, what mediation helps or assists in doing is to de-escalate the conflict from proceeding to a violent position or a violent place or unrest, as we've seen in recent times. So at that de-escalation state, parties are willing to listen. Parties are willing to open up and say, you know what, this has continued for so long. We are now ready to discuss. We are ready to hear what, for example, the government has to say or the stakeholders have to tell us. Let's even hear them out. We want government to tell us how they will be able to address our needs. So that's another reason or importance of using mediation in addressing social movement conflicts. Of course, mediation provides you a tailored solution. We cannot overemphasize that, because the whole beauty of mediation is party-driven. Parties own the conflict and parties own the solution. Some people will ask, why mediation in social movements? Why not arbitration? Arbitration is adjudicatory in nature. It entails a third party telling the parties, preferring solutions to the parties. But in mediation, the solution to the dispute is preferred by the parties themselves. So we say in mediation, the parties own the dispute and the parties own the solution. And that's why we are advocating for mediation in resolving social movement disputes. We proceed to the legislative framework for mediation in social movement. Now, it is multifaceted. What we mean by that is you cannot say this is the law, this is the particular legislation which provides for the use of mediation in resolving disputes within the social movement environment. However, we can see from our legislations, from our laws, our policies, that the framework of mediation is broad and it's actually can be helpful and useful in resolving sub-conflicts. We start from our constitution, which we know is the ground norm in Nigeria. Of course, the constitution provides the framework for rule of law to be upheld and protection of fundamental human rights. You can't take that away, no matter what people have to say. Our constitution remains our ground, and we would always find our backing from whatever we do as regards addressing disputes or resolving conflicts from our constitution. You can look at section 19 D of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. Again, we'll go to the Arbitration and Mediation Act 2020, the AMA. And I'm a bit silent on that because our professors and some of our gurus in the field will tell you that, oh, there's no express definition of mediation in resolving social movements within the AMA. Yes, I agree to that. However, the AMA recognizes that mediation is a tool for alternative dispute resolution, is a method. And that's why personally, I prefer to define my ADR as appropriate dispute resolution. So it's now left for us to dig into our toolbox to pick the best tool, the best mechanism in resolving the particular disputes which we have been confronted with. For me, mediation is a go-to, and I hope I'll be able to convince you before the end of this webinar that mediation still remains a viable tool in the resolution of varying disputes. We look at state laws on ADR. A good number of states have imbibed ADRs into their law. Lagos is, for example, one of them. We have Ogun, another one. So, of course, if we're saying there's no particular legislation that defines mediation in the context of social movement, these laws have provided the framework for which we can use mediation in resolving disputes. We only then need to appreciate and understand how to administer mediation within the context of disputes we find ourselves. We also have the peace-building policies, which the government and non-governmental organizations keep advocating and still advocating for the use of mediation in community conflicts. We have national policies on justice. The Fed recently, as at when this paper was presented, was last week, and so this is 2 weeks now. The Federal Executive Council have released and approved the national policy on arbitration and alternative dispute resolution. And somebody will say, oh, they said arbitration. Yes, but there's alternative dispute resolution in there. And mediation is an alternative dispute resolution mechanism. We have our justice system, which has embraced and imbibed ADR, the use. So you find situations where you go to courts for a dispute to be resolved and you get feedback. Oh, why don't you try mediation to resolve or attempt mediation in resolving these disputes? And if it fails, then you can come back to court. That is a framework. That is the backing which we have in the use of mediation in resolving disputes. We also have international treaties. Nigeria has signed, is a party to too many. I can't begin to list them out for you, but Nigeria is a party, a signatory to a couple of treaties which promotes peaceful conflict resolution. Influenced, of course, being a signatory to these treaties entails that you must domesticate it when you come back to your country or you come back to your state. And this guides our practice of mediation. The National Industrial Court, again, has also provided, here they provided there's explicit provision for the use of mediation in resolving labor disputes. And if we know, and if we accept that mediation is a tool or a mechanism for resolving labor disputes, which we have seen and we see in our case studies, of course, that tells you that mediation is a go-to when you come to social movements in Nigeria. We also have the community mediation initiatives, and a beautiful example is Katsina states, which have introduced the Community Information and Advocacy Initiative for resolution of disputes. So we can see that even though there's no express definition or explicit definition, or we cannot say this is the legislation in which it is defined categorically, if I use that word, we have the backing and we have the framework for the use of mediation in resolving social movement disputes. Now, we talk about the examples and the common challenges we find in the use of mediation in resolving social movements. Of course, we know about the Niger Delta crisis, which is as a result of environmental degradation, poverty, and, name it. Those of us in the Niger Delta region know about that. But the beauty of that, and why I've chipped this in as an example, is because that crisis, that conflict led us into having the Presidential Amnesty Program of 2009. And that was achieved by the mediation between the government and the militant groups. So if we didn't have that process or that assisted negotiation between the ex-militants or even we know there's an activist who we refer to now as a former militant. If we didn't have that, then of course we wouldn't be talking about mediation in the resolution of social movements. Another example is the labor movement recently, which of course was advocating for right of workers to fair wage, improved condition of service, and all that. And of course, we saw the backlash where there were strikes, there were protests, which led to conflict within the government. And they told us, or what we heard, and what some of us we kept following was the meetings, the negotiations which followed between labor and government. Of course, that is mediation, or that was mediation being had. Another example is the social justice movement, which we all know that took place in 2020. That is the End SARS protest. End SARS protest was, of course, a demand for an end to police brutality, which we know about the body that was involved in that. However, post that movement, because the mediation that took place didn't come in while the protest was on, it was post the movement, post the protest. We saw mediation which addressed the grievance, which then led to discussions concerning police reform, accountability for mechanisms, and community safety. These are all examples which has led to us adopting and believing and accepting mediation as a tool for resolving social movement conflict. But the pointers for us here are the challenges in the use of mediation for resolution of such conflicts. And one of it is the mistrust for authorities. Now, communities, individuals, as the case may be, will always have that skeptical feeling, that emotion as, are we sure the government is going to listen to us? Are we sure they're going to hear us? And while we cannot blame them because of previous histories which we've had, but it's there. That mistrust is there. You want to be sure that your conversations, your discussions is with the other party who is actually listening actively to you, to what your grievances are, to what you were saying. But again, let's remember that there will always be power imbalance in such conflicts. There will be variation in powers. Of course, we look at governments, we look at stakeholders, and we say, government will always have the upper hand. And of course, when we talk about the last administration told us we should stop hate speech. While we know and we appreciate and we discourage hate speech, however, grievances can be put forward in such a way that they will be heard and they will be addressed. So we always have that power imbalance in terms of conflicts. There will be that mistrust of authorities. Again, cultural sensitivity. Mediators now, speaking to mediators now need to be cautious. They need to pay attention to these cultural sensitivities, because you can't attempt to resolve or to assist parties in resolving their dispute if you do not pay credence to their cultural differences. And that's why when we facilitate mediation, we say for example, in your opening statement, we say, ask the parties how they want to be addressed. In the corners, it will say, listen and take, don't stretch, don't just say you want to shake the opposite sex, because those are cultural sensitivities which guide the beliefs, the norm, and the understanding, the way they act. And if you accept as a mediator and you believe that your own cultural perspective is not superior to the other, of course, then you be able to get parties to open up and trust you in order for you to assist them in resolving their conflict. Of course, there's also lack of awareness, and this has run through most of the conflicts which we'll see and we've seen. Lack of awareness, in as much as we in ICMC will build a culture of resolving disputes via mediation, a whole lot of people in society still have not embraced or accepted or even understood what mediation really entails. And again, going back to facilitating mediation sessions, we also say, in delivering your opening statement, explain to the parties what your role there is and what the process actually is about. Because a party who you are inviting for mediation, and the party doesn't understand what mediation is, you would look at it as a waste of time. Some of them will even be discouraged. They wouldn't even want to be on that mediation table. So these are a few challenges which we can point our hands to as a discouragement, as a yardstick for being discouraged in using mediation for addressing social movement conflicts. Now, our case study for the day, which is the End Bad Governance in Nigeria protests, which just happened recently. If you can see my screen, you can see the beautiful, please don't laugh at my conflict tree, but you can see the beautiful conflict tree there, which we have named the hashtag End Bad Governance. Now, some people will ask, the first bullet point says Better Movement, End SARS 2020. The End Bad Governance protest didn't just begin in 2024. Its birth mother is the End SARS protest of 2020, which was for police brutality and the disbandment of police units, which was known for the human rights abuse. But of course, we saw that protest, we saw that social movement evolve, not just from police brutality, to issues of governance and accountability, which then gave birth, which then yielded this End Bad Governance, which we saw recently. Of course, there was widespread dissatisfaction for government and how so far they have managed the economy. There was corruption, there's poor infrastructure, inadequate public services, etc., etc. The list goes on as to why the End Bad Governance protest came about. Well, I need us to pay attention to the green part of our tree, which we make reference to in conflict analysis as the fruits, the leaves, and of branches of the conflict. Now, what this tells you or what this shows you is, if these fruits, if these vices that we saw during the End Bad Governance is not properly managed, we have another protest or social movement on our hands. An example, of course, we saw the raidings, we saw the killings, the unfair representation, we saw looting, which amuses me how in the Connaught, how in the course of protest, you would be destroying amenities which are put for your benefits. We saw that happen during the protest. But specifically, that hatred now, which emanated from the end bad governance, has then yielded another, or we hope with time it's going to be managed properly or addressed, and the mediation in the use of mediation will be able to manage and address the grievance, which now we are hearing and we see as the hashtag Igbo must go. As at 2020, we had the end bad governance, which was one of the children or one of the fruits of the end SARS protest. But now we have the end bad governance protest, and we are seeing the hatred of Igbo must go. We see the fear, which nobody anticipates which direction is going to go. We hope mediation will use mediation to address this, and we'll see how it goes from there. Now, key questions which we would use to continue our conversations today is, how can mediators effectively engage with protesters and authorities? Because you will hear, oh, this party, they're having their own dialogue or they're having their own meeting. The protesters don't want to listen to anybody. They're here. But how can mediators engage both parties? Because in mediation, you're not just talking to one party. You are talking to both parties. You are assisting both parties in resolving their disputes. Of course, there are certain key factors which must be in place for such mediations to be successful. We would also look at that as we progress. And there are lessons to be learned. But the question is, these lessons, are we really learning it, or have we really learned from them? We'll see that as we progress. Now, engaging protesters and authorities. As a mediator, you must build trust and credibility. Parties must trust you to be able to open up to you. You must create a neutral space for open expression of concern. Because if a party doesn't trust you, your process is, I doubt if I can call the trust of parties and for your credibility to show in such a way that parties open up to you and tell you, these are my grievances. In as much as we appreciate that this crisis affects the entire Nigeria, the entire situation. However, this is where it pinches us the most, and we want government to look into it. Again, we're using our end bad governance protest as our case study here. You want to facilitate community forums for discussion. You must conduct informal meetings to build rapport before the formal negotiation goes on. And we saw an example of it in the protest, in the end bad governance protest, where we had a lawyer, his name just flew out of my head. When it comes back, we will talk about it, in Abuja, where he had to speak. He was the spokesperson for the protesters in Abuja. And we saw him make reference to, oh, yes, there's a court order that says the protest can go on, but we should be within the confines of the stadium. And this is where we are. Definitely, there have been meetings, informal meetings between him and the protesters, which gives him that, which they've given him that confidence, that trust, which they've built in him to be able to speak on their behalf. And same thing for the police arm, who was also speaking for the IDP, saying, oh, yes, we are not here to stop the protestants. We are not here to allow this matter escalate further. We are just here to ensure that the protest goes on within the ambit for which it has been provided for. So there must be that trust, there must be that credibility for a mediator to engage with the protesters and the authorities, as the case may be. There must be active listening and empathy. One of the keys in mediation, in having a successful mediation, is empathy for the parties. Because we say we are not creatures of logic, we are creatures of emotions. While we allow the parties to vent, because in venting or in speaking, they open up and tell us exactly what their interests in the matter would be. Don't go too far. For example, I'll give an example here, which we usually give. in the course of a mediation, and a party is crying and can't really continue in the speech or in the conversation. As a mediator, while you understand and accept that there's a whole lot of bottled up emotion which is coming out, don't go and start rubbing the back of the party saying sorry, don't worry, all will be all right. No, you don't give assurances, you don't give guarantees. You're only there to guide the process. You're only there, you understand and appreciate where the party is coming from and how the emotional reactions has led to tears. But it's not now for you to tell the party it's okay to be well, you rub the back. Again, in mediation, you have to be even handed. If as a mediator, you feel your own way of showing empathy, which we discourage, please don't quote me otherwise. If you feel your own way of showing empathy to the party is a tap, it has to be decent though, a tap on the back. Make sure you tap the other person at the back while the other person is expressing themselves, or for what is what, burst into some form of emotions. You must do that. But the key is be empathetic towards the parties, not sympathetic. And you must listen actively. Because as a mediator, if you're not listening actively to what the parties are saying, you will miss out on the point. You will miss out on the valid information which they want you to hear or which they want you to know. So please, grasp emotions and motivations behind protesters' words. It's necessary, it's key. Practice active listening to understand underlying issues. No party will come and tell you, oh, okay, this is what my problem is, and leave it at that. No. What they will tell you is their positions, where they stand. And those will blow out before you know it. So as a mediator, you must dig deeper, you must listen actively in between the line to understand and hear what the parties are saying. Facilitating open dialogue and communication, we can't emphasize that a lot. Mediation entails communication, dialogue, talk, open up to me. But again, it has to be constructive and structured communication. Don't just allow people or parties just talk without end, without direction. You must manage the process. There must be constructive dialogue or communication, as the case may be. And that's why we say organize town hall meetings and use digital platform for discussion. Today, the advent of COVID-19 has given us varying platforms, various virtual and digital platforms for us to discuss. A whole lot of people use Zoom, some use Twitter. So the most important thing is you must create an avenue, a platform for which such communication, such dialogues can be had. A mediator must remain neutral and impartial. The dispute is not yours. The solution is not yours, it's for the parties. So you must remain even-handed. You must remain neutral. You can't favor one party. Even if you work in, I advise, if you work in government and you're trying to resolve this, please step aside. Because the question is, are you able to remain neutral or impartial throughout the process? But if you can, why not? It's beautiful because it gives you an edge to be able to communicate better or pass the information, the grievance of the other party across to the other party, for them to be able to say, okay, I hear you loud and clear. This is where I come from. And let's talk. If I give this and you bring this, you put this on the table, where does that lead us to? Where does that end? So facilitating dialogue entails that you must show that you remain biased with integrity throughout the mediation process. Of course, inclusive representation. You find out in most community disputes that the two parties who are before you are not just the only stakeholders in that conflict or in that dispute. So you, as a mediator, you must ensure that all voices must be heard and represented, including whether you call them the protesters, the government officials, the civil society groups. You must make sure that their voices are heard when you are engaging between the protesters and the governments, as the case may be, the other interest group in the social movement disputes. Engage diverse community leaders and interest groups to reflect multi-grievances, because you may feel you're just, oh, okay, this is end bad governance is between the protesters and the government. We saw the anti-protest group coming. They had to be heard, or they were government stages the government brought in to destabilize or discourage the protest. But they had their voice. They had to be included. They had to be represented in the media. Hopefully, they will be represented in the mediation as we progress. Now, the key factors to successful mediation, there must be clear objectives of both the protesters and the authorities, as the case may be. Without clear objectives, I'm not sure how a mediator will be able to assist both parties in resolving such social movement disputes. So you must identify the common grounds for mediation between the parties. And in our end-back governance case, we saw the protesters who sought accountability and reform, but the authorities kept saying that they need to protect public order and safety. Common grounds. You must emphasize these shared goals, such as the public safety and the human rights, in order for you to be able to facilitate negotiation between the parties. Of course, a key factor to successful mediation entails commitment to dialogue. Mediation is not a one-off. Both parties must be committed. They must be responsible for this constructive dialogue. Not one party. One party cannot solve the dispute alone, because it takes two parties or two groups to be in conflict. Of course, emphasizing and reiterating the benefits of mediation can encourage reluctant parties to participate in the process of mediation. Example, we all say governments are not willing. Government are not ready to listen to us. They're not ready to participate. But we have situations, and we've seen where the benefits of what government has to gain being put on the table encourages them to come in and dialogue in order to resolve the conflicts. Cultural sensitivity is another key factor. You must, as a mediator, understand this cultural context in order for you to address protests. Of course, some of this, in as much as this historical grievances, such as ethnic tensions, social economic disparities, just name them, they have a way of influencing these cultural sensitivities, but mediators should consider these factors in order to navigate the complexities effectively and assist the parties in resolving the dispute. There must be flexibility and adaptability. As a mediator, your process must be flexible in such a way that as the discussion progresses, you must be able to adjust here and there. And that's why we have situations where we say you could have a hybrid kind of mediation, where you start off physically, with physical meetings, and for want of whatever may be, you see parties opting for a virtual continuation of the mediation process. As a mediator, you must be flexible and you must adapt to these situations as they arise. Now, lessons learned. Have we really learned the lesson? Is a big question. These lessons, are they ongoing? Absolutely, because we are not yet there. We keep improving as the day goes by. Well, one of it is the necessity for preemptive dialogue, because you have early warnings, which is good in order for you to engage, to prevent and mitigate this violence from getting to the conflict or the crisis stage where nobody is willing to listen anymore and destruction just goes off the radar. So you must engage proactively before it escalates. There must be prompt intervention, which can prevent distrust and hostility. Another is building trust and credibility. We've talked about this, we've touched it, and we'll keep saying trust is essential. Trust is essential. It's only if you trust somebody that you'll be able to open up to the person as regards what's bothering you. Likewise, in mediation, be you an authority, be you the government, be you the stakeholder, or even be you the protesters, you need trust to be able to open up. So you, as a mediator, you must build this credibility by demonstrating your impartiality and your empathy towards the parties in the conflict. Your community leaders' involvement enhances this legitimacy a great deal. We also have creating the safe and inclusive space for dialogue. Of course, you must establish an environment where both parties can talk freely without fear of, oh, what I say will be used against me. Yes, we know in mediation you can't do that. Generally, in ADR processes, you can't use what has been said against any party. But you must address this fear that whatever parties tell you, in this context where you have uneven power balance, that there will not be retaliation from the other party in order to promote this dialogue. You must prioritize psychological safety in both physical and virtual platforms. Please, while you're using your virtual platform, please make sure it is safe enough for parties to be able to open up and communicate to you, and avoid and not be scared that they'll be trolled by stalkers, or, the negative vices we see in the use of social media. Now we have utilization of technology for engagement. We should now, at this point, at this age, at this year, at this time, leverage on technology for communication during protest. The social media platform is not just for you to go and hear news, or for you to go and see the pictures as a result of the protest or the crisis. It can be used to organize dialogue, communication. It can also be used to monitor public sentiments. And it can also be used to give you real-time feedback as regards what people's opinion, there's so many digital platforms. Instagram, there's so many examples of the people who are now utilizing Instagram for organizing and discussing such grievances which they have, either against the government or against other stakeholders, or even between themselves, between individuals, as the case may be. This digital platform facilitates dialogue, and you can adapt mediation approaches. We have the ODR, which is the online dispute resolution. It's a beautiful innovation, which I encourage all of us to try. We also say we should acknowledge and address grievances. Now, we say when you are tendering apology, just don't say, "I'm sorry," and leave it at that. That's not an adequate or a good apology, as the case may be. Acknowledging, recognizing, and validating these grievances from both parties goes a long way. I understand I may have done one or two things that hurt you. I'm sorry about it. You've acknowledged, you've recognized that, okay, there's a grievance, there's something which has not been done properly. And it goes a long way in assisting in resolving disputes. So we must ensure that protesters' concerns are heard and actively addressed to reduce these tensions which we see today in our social movement. Again, we talk about engagement of third-party actors. Now, we talk about the NGOs, neutral third parties in mediation process. Utilize the resources and their expertise, either internationally or locally. It assists, it helps. Involve these parties to enhance your mediation process. Of course, we say long-time commitment to change. Mediation is not a one-off. It doesn't just stop there. And that's why when we talk about the role of the mediator, we say you could also have supervisory role after the mediation, where you have to ensure that the parties who you've assisted in resolving their dispute are living up to their agreement, living up to the settlement which they've come about themselves. So you must advocate for long-term strategies. An example which I put there is the Edo people una too wise. So there's this advert for Edo State election, and we saw the candidates, the candidate who is contesting, sharing palliatives for the people, and they accepted it. And a passerby who stood observing what was happening confronted the family, saying, "Why are you collecting these parties? This is the reason why we are not moving, we are not progressing in this economy." And the family said to him, "We will not just collect, this is part of our national cake. So even though we've collected it, we will still go ahead, go out on that day, and we will vote wisely." And the passerby said, Edo people are too wise. Now, for me, it's not just the conversation I gathered for it, but I gathered dialogue. So there was that communication, that discussion to understand exactly what this family were doing. And I found out that in the long term, while they've collected the palliative, which is being shared to them, they also accepted that it's not just sitting back at home, collecting and just eating, and that one will finish, you go. They also have the mindset of going out, the continuous, the long term, which is going out to vote wisely for the party which they wanted. So for me, it was the advert resonated dialogue and reform, because you must communicate in order for you to be able to bring about change, which is the reform. And then we talk about conflict management and conflict resolution, which is the lesson which we're learning. these skills needs to be imbibed by all, whether current mediators, anticipatory mediators, future, whatever. We must imbibe this conflict management and resolution skills because it comes in handy in any situation which we find ourselves. So we must equip ourselves with these skills. Somebody will ask me, what are these skills? Empathy is one of the skills. Active listening is one of the skills. So these skills can be imbibed through training, emotional intelligence, and negotiation techniques. Of course, we advocate for principled bargaining, which is a shift from position to principle. It's not just saying, okay, I stand here, I'm not agreeing to what you're saying. You must be able to say, okay, I'm willing to agree for X, Y, Z. Are you going to shift? So there must be collaboration. There must be that training which teaches you the skill for you to be able to manage and resolve conflicts. And it's not a one-off again. You must keep at it. I know that a couple of us who have done mediation training and we've left it. To us, okay, we know what mediation is about. We know what ADR entails. And if we find ourselves somewhere, we can use it. It just doesn't end there. You need to keep learning. There's a whole lot to learn. At some point, somebody would say, oh, okay, mediation, resolving social movement dispute. Yes, because mediation gives you that dialogue, that opportunity for dialogue, that opportunity for discussion, tailored solution. So we have to keep learning in order to use the skills which we've learned in any circumstance we find ourselves. Okay. So now, while mediation has the potential to resolve social movement conflicts, we must and we should be able to overcome the challenges if our mediation process is going to be crucial, is going to be effectively done. And again, all this we've discussed or all this I've highlighted today are just insights and guide for the mediators in order for them to foster constructive dialogue in the context of social movement, because we cannot take away the fact that social movement is growing rapidly, not just in Nigeria, but globally in the world. And this brings me to the end of our discussion or conversation. So I say a big thank you. You can then ask me question if you have question. Are we still
Thank you
together? Can you
so
all
much.
hear me?
Um, I can hear you, Ma.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Jaffa.
you so much for that wonderful presentation. Mrs. Ifeanyi, thank you so much for the insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Your expertise has truly shed light on the crucial role of mediation in addressing social movements and the valuable lessons we can learn from the recent protests. So at this point, we would like to open the floor for any question or comment. You can use the raise hand feature if you want to ask any question. But we already have some questions in the chat box. If you have questions, you can also drop it in the chat box. So quickly, I'll just take some few questions that we have in the chat box and some comments. So this is coming from Amina Bello. He said, you have said both parties must be committed. My question is, what will you do when party refuse to commit since mediation is voluntary? That's coming from Amina Bello. Should I read through all the questions now? I didn't get you. Okay. Okay. Our question is, what will you do when one party refuses to commit since mediation is voluntary? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for muting me. I apologize. For some reason, the mute and unmute button seems to be. Okay, so thank you for the question. Now, while I was presenting, I mentioned you would most often than not have reluctant parties in your mediation session. And that's why we keep emphasizing for you to discuss, for you to explain the essence, the benefits of mediation to the party. You can't, for mediation is voluntary. And we are not asking you as a mediator to tell parties, okay, if you're not ready to resolve your dispute through mediation, you can walk away. No. Even though you know parties can leave the table because it's their process, is their dispute, is their solution. You must be able as a mediator, this is where the skill comes in now. You as a mediator must be able to encourage parties to see the benefits of mediation in resolving their disputes. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very
Or
much.
you want me
Thank you,
to?
ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, please.
The next question is there a platform that facilitates mediation between government and the public? And who is qualified to be the mediator between government and protesters?
Oh, so there are a couple of platforms, like I said, which can be used to facilitate dialogue or mediation between the government and the people. Again, it has to come as an agreement between the parties, right? And the mediator, which is going to be, the mediator can be appointed by, I can be appointed the mediator. You can be appointed the mediator. The most important thing is that you have the skills, you have the qualifications, you have the training, and you understand, you are proficient. You have your competence, that's the word. You have the competence in resolution of that kind of dispute. So we advise, if you are a family mediator and you've been called on to mediate a communal dispute and you do not have the competence, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's nothing to be shy about. Explain to your parties, while you have the skills and the competence to do mediation, your proficiency, your competence is in family mediation. However, you can refer the parties to a community mediator who would address, or who you believe would be able to assist them better in the resolution of the dispute. So there's no particular qualification which brings out an individual as a government slash protest.
Thank you, ma'am. So someone is asking if the webinar is recorded. Yes, you can watch again on our YouTube. We're currently live on YouTube, so you can rewatch on our YouTube. Just search for Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators on YouTube, and you can rewatch anytime. And we advise that you share this webinar with your friends so that they can also learn from this session. Thank you. This question is coming from Madam Justina. What are the ways mediators can contribute their quota to ensuring peace at the present Nigeria, especially as it regards to the present protest and counter protest?
Okay, so I use myself as an example. I'm contributing my quota to ensure that there's peace in the present day in Nigeria. And how am I doing that? I'm doing that by this webinar, explaining to parties that it just doesn't stop, or it just doesn't begin by saying end bad government. It doesn't stop by saying, oh, we take to the streets to protest. Within your local community, within your nuclear space, you can discuss with families, friends, youths, and you'll be amazed how, again, social media platforms quickly boost and skyrocket this situation, this unrest which we have in societies today. So you can contribute to the peace in Nigeria, or to resolving such disputes in Nigeria, by starting within your immediate circle, by encouraging, by by informing people, by changing their perspective. Because again, the whole idea is for people to see the benefits, for people to see the light and what is happening, and not just sharing a negative narrative. Is to change the perspective of individuals, groups, governments, stakeholders, wherever you find yourself, change their perspectives from negative to positive. And that will go a long way in ensuring that there will be a peaceful, or there will be more harmonious environment for all of us to live in.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That was a very insightful presentation, and thank you for the answers to the question. I would like to recognize the presence of our Deputy President, too, person of Your Excellency, Madam Aisha Ado Abdullahi. Your Excellency, thank you for joining. So quickly, we also have with us our past president, Dr. Agada Elachi, SAN. If we don't mind, I would like us to take a few goodwill message from him, if it's still with us. And we also have our past registrar with us, Ambassador Segun Ogunyan. He will come after our past president, Dr. Gada. Your Excellency, Dr. Gada, please, are you there, sir? Please, would you like to unmute your mic, sir?
Yes, Joshua, I'm here. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, members of the mediation family. Let me start by congratulating our presenter this afternoon for a fantastic presentation. It was very enlightening. I have learned a lot. I thought I already know a lot, but I learned a lot this afternoon, and it's testament to the fact that if we continue to work hard, we'll continue to expand the coast of mediation, and particularly, as I always say, knowledge is a gift. So thank you for sharing. I also congratulate our great institute for the work that it continues to do. And I salute all the past leaders and members of and current leadership who are here. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please join me as I also welcome Ambassador Segun Ogunyan for a brief goodwill message on this. Excellency, please, would you like to unmute your mic, sir? Oh, great. He said he's in a meeting, sorry. You send me up. Deputy Tuma, we'd like to hear from you before we close today. Excellency Aisha Abdullahi. Okay. So while we wait for DP2, I would like to make announcements that part of our continuing professional development for this month, in case for our members who are interested in upgrading their membership, on the 22nd of this month, which is tomorrow, you would like to upgrade your membership from a cadre to the other. We'll be having psychology of mediation. It's a 9 CPD units, and there is discount for all our members. All members are to pay 35,000, while non-members will be paying 50,000 naira. So this will be happening tomorrow. And also, if you would like to learn more about mediating communal conflicts, having on 28th and 29th of this month, mediating communal conflict. This is an 18 CPD unit that gives us opportunity to also upgrade our membership. So I will encourage our members and non-members to get ready to participate in this wonderful and continuing professional development course. It is also my pleasure to inform us that the largest ADR conference in Africa, it is the ICMC annual ADR conference and induction ceremony of our new professional members will be coming up on the 26th of November 2024. This is to call all members and non-members to register for this conference. It is the largest in Africa. early bird registration is currently on. So if you would like to benefit from the early bird, this will be closing on the 30th of September. Fellow is 40,000, member is 25, associate is just 20,000 naira. And if you'll be participating for the conference virtually, you want to register with 15,000 naira only. And non-member is 30,000, and international, there's also opportunity for international participants to join us virtually. The theme of this conference is Rethinking Mediation Strategy in a Turbulent World. It will be happening live at the Abuja International Trade and Convention Center here in Abuja. So right before we close today, as we all know, this webinar comes with a certificate of participation, which is optional for anyone who would like to get certificate of participation. So if you are interested, you can use this link on the screen to pay for the certificate. I can see the end of Mr. Akubo is Uzo. Please, can you unmute your mic, sir, and share with us your comment or question before we close? Mr. Akubo, please unmute your mic.
Okay, Josh, good day, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, I want to ask, for those of us that are coming for induction for fellow, what is the appropriate fee for us to pay? Are we paying what is on that flyer for this annual conference coming up November? Or is there any other fee we have to pay? Those coming up from membership to fellow.
Okay, in response to your question, if you're part of the inductee for this year induction ceremony, either you will be inducted as an associate or fellow or member, you are not to pay the conference fee. Why? Your induction fee has covered for your conference registration fee. So in summary, what I'm saying is that all inductees are not to pay for the conference registration fee. Thank you.
Okay, so how much are we going to pay?
The induction fee for fellow is 200,000. For member is 100,000. For associate is 50,000 only. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Yes, Manuel, please unmute your mic and quickly share with us your question. Okay, while we wait for Ahmed, Chris Emeka, please can you unmute your mic?
Hello, Mr. Josh. Hello.
Please proceed, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I can hear you. I can hear you clearly. Please.
Yes, I wanted to ask. I received an invitation letter.
Hello, my brother.
Are you with me? Hello.
Yes, please proceed. I can hear you, sir.
Yes, I said I received an invitation letter to be inducted, and also I also received another email again after maybe some minute that it was sent on error. So I don't understand. So what is going on? So I haven't met the normal CPD. I don't know. To fellow.
Okay. To fellow, okay. The induction fee for fellow, if you are going to be inducted into fellow, that is 200,000 naira. So you can make payment to the account details in the mail that was sent to you regarding the invitation to induction ceremony.
Yes, maybe you should check for me.
Thank you. Excellency Chris Emeka, please unmute your mic.
Okay. I think at a point, good day. I think at a point I lost concentration in when you started talking. So, and I wouldn't know if you've addressed this issue. Like someone that isn't physically present there in Abuja. I mean, and that person wants to be a fellow of the institute. How would the person go about it if you are not physically present? Is this something you can probably get online, something? No, that's my question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chris. If I get your question properly, you are asking if somebody can participate in our course of direct admission to fellow. We have the virtual class for the direct admission to fellow, and also we have the physical class. The next physical class will be holding in Lagos, and the next virtual class will be holding in September 23rd to 26th. So if you are unable to attend the Lagos edition of the direct admission to fellow, we encourage you to register in advance for the admission to fellow, which is going to be holding virtually. All you need for that is a smart device or a smart laptop or phone to enable you to participate seamlessly. So in the absence of any other questions, we are already running late.
Hello, Mr. Joshua.
Can I get the link to it? Maybe
Please
to
proceed.
my email.
Hello, Mr. I was unable to get your information. I asked you a question, then I did not hear anything you said. So I was out. So I think it was network. So I did not hear you. What did you say as regard the two emails that I received? One instructing me to make payment for my induction. The other one, sending a message that it was an error. So I did not understand. And I have
Joshua, Joshua, why don't you take this offline with these participants? This is a seminar. This is a